Join the most innovative and passionate education community at South by Southwest EDU 2023. Take part in impactful community-driven programming, unparalleled networking opportunities, and unexpected discoveries. March 6th through 9th, 2023 in Austin, Texas. Visit southbysouthwestedu.com to discover more than 200 sessions already revealed, featuring inspiring thought leaders in education. Register today. This is EWA Radio, the podcast of the Education Writers Association. I'm public editor and your host, Kavita Cardosa. Starting on the education beat is not easy. There are all kinds of edu-speak that doesn't sound like it's even English, lots of acronyms that are confusing, and everyone has an opinion on what you should cover. It's also one of the best beats there is. I always thought you could draw a straight, short through line as to why we do what we do anytime we visit a classroom, really. It's the children. Joining me today is Kyra Miles with WBHM. It's the NPR station in Birmingham, Alabama. She was new to the education reporting beat last year, and a piece she worked on when she was just 3 months on the job won her national recognition. We're hoping her story inspires you to get out your EWA Awards application and complete it. Thanks so much for being here, Kyra.
Thank you, Kavita.
How did you join the education beat and how did you end up in Birmingham?
So I graduated from college in 2021, May of 2021. And leading up to the end of my senior year, I was looking for jobs, applying for different jobs, and I came across Report for America, which is kind of like Teach for America, but for journalists. So we're placed in places where there is like a need for a certain coverage area. And on Report for America, you get to like choose your like top 5 places. And one of them that I put down was WBHM, specifically for an education reporter. So that's how I got on the education beat. It was kind of just after graduation, I was willing to move anywhere and I was willing to cover anything in a way. And I kind of feel like I had an kind of an education background on like college newspapers and the college radio show at UNC where I graduated.
Did you find that was common among your classmates? Like, were they interested in education reporting? I find a lot of people don't even think about it.
Yeah, I definitely think education reporting kind of has that reputation of being like, you know, it's
a
not
starter beat.
Right. It's not your preferred beat, but you'll start on it. And I don't know if I had that perception of it necessarily. Like I said, I thought education was something that I could cover. I come from a family of educators. And ironically, I always said I wasn't going to be a teacher. I'm not going to be a teacher just like my parents or my grandparents, but I ended up covering education. So couldn't get too far away from that. But yeah, I mean, I don't think I talked to anybody that when I was in school about, oh yeah, I want to be an education reporter, but I'm loving it so far.
What do you find most surprising about the beat?
Surprising.
I know for me, it was like all the acronyms. It was like, oh my God, like it felt like I was in the military or something, you know?
Yeah, I think maybe for me, the surprising part, or maybe the part that like threw me off guard a little bit was all of the policy stuff as well. Because connecting with people has been really good. Like it's not surprising necessarily, but it's a good thing that I'm excited about, connecting with students, connecting with teachers, parents, doing all that. But once you get into the policy, that's where I start to be like, oh, I think I know what I'm doing, but yeah.
And so how did you kind of map out when you were new? Did you have like a strategy of, okay, how am I going to kind of understand this beat?
Yes. So my first month was basically a series of meetings with different education-minded people in the city of Birmingham. So different like education orgs, principals, teachers, Teach for America, trying to connect with parents, joining a bunch of Facebook groups. So my first month really was me just trying to like get a sense of what's going on in Birmingham in terms of education, and then also connecting with other education reporters already in the state who have already been covering what I'm trying to like, dip my feet into.
I bet they were really helpful.
Oh yeah.
That's one of the things which is awesome about the education beat is the reporters are very collaborative and,
Mhm.
it isn't like being on the political beat, for example.
Right. I think it's because we all have the similar goal, right? Like we all want these stories to make sure that they get out there, like especially when it comes to students. So regardless, if we can help each other, we're going to try to help each other. And I really like that about the education beat.
Mhm. So you won an award in your first year on the beat, but you actually stumbled on this particular story in your first 3 months. Tell us a little bit about your piece, LGBTQ Students Find Hope in New Affirming School, the Magic City Acceptance Academy.
Yeah, so it was one of the first stories that I was interested in doing when I first got the job. So I think in my interview for this job, that was one of the stories that I had pitched or suggested that I would be interested in doing. Because after Googling around like Birmingham education, I had seen that the Magic City Acceptance Academy was something that was coming to Birmingham. I think they had like been denied their charter at first, but then they were accepted by the state. And I have a strong interest in uplifting the voices of marginalized students or students from marginalized backgrounds. And so the Magic City Acceptance Academy is the first school in the South to specifically affirm LGBTQ students in its mission statement. And so, like I said, I think it's important for me to share those stories about the South that challenge stereotypes about the region, especially about LGBTQ students and their parents and teachers.
You had said that you aren't from Birmingham. Where are you from?
I'm from North Carolina originally.
Okay. And were there cultural differences you found between
Uh,
the two cities?
Kind of. I mean, North Carolina is still the South, but it's like one of those like border South, like it's right at the top of like what is considered the South and what isn't. So moving down to the deep South, I would say there's like slight cultural differences, but nothing that's unfamiliar to me. If anything, it just might be like more, like you might be in longer conversations with people that you don't know at the grocery store because, strangers just talk to each other all the time here. That's how it is down here. So those kind of things. I didn't necessarily find it that different. I was scared it would be. Like, for example, like I said, wanting to cover students with marginalized identities, I was worried that maybe I wouldn't be able to find people who are open to talking about it on the record, who are open to talking about those things as much as I might find in where I'm from in North Carolina. But what actually happened is that I found that people do want those stories to get out there. They do want people to know that, hey, we're here despite what you might see, in the media about Alabama. Like, we're here and we're trying to, fight the fight and get our voices heard.
Have you gone back and spoken to them recently?
At the Magic City Acceptance Academy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I say yeah happily, but it wasn't really necessarily on a happy note. So actually, a couple months after the story came out, and there was some, more local outlets reporting on it too, there were some local political attack ads targeted at the school specifically, hate speech and things like that from right-wing politicians in Alabama against the school. And so I contacted the principal after that saying like, hey, how are y'all doing? He said they were doing okay, but it was just a little, scary to have people coming after the school. It's also one of those situations where you can't help but think like, maybe I don't want it to believe that like my reporting or the reporting that we did locally is what put it on these people's like radar. But, I also do know like from parents that I've talked to after the story came out that this helped them like realize there was a school that they didn't know existed for their kids anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's one thing. And then for the students that I talked to, there was some anti-trans legislation passed in Alabama, like a ban on gender affirming care for minors. And so one of the students I interviewed is transgender. And so I met back up with him and his mom to ask how he was doing. So I have met back up with people. Unfortunately, it hasn't been necessarily for positive reasons, but I have checked in and people are generally doing well outside of the politics of the state.
Mm-hmm. So, Kyra, I have such a vested interest in chatting with you, apart from hearing about what it's been like being a cub reporter. I want to use your story to encourage other reporters to apply for an EWA award. When I started out, I knew about the awards, but I don't know whether I was too nervous or I didn't think I was good enough, or I'm not sure what I thought. I just know I didn't apply for many years. I wanted to ask you to share what made you think about applying.
I don't think much thought went into it. I felt like, what do I have to lose to apply? It was on my radar already. I was a part of the New to the Beat cohort last year. And so I think the awards were already on my radar when I saw the applications were open. I asked my station, I said, hey, do we have a budget for awards applications? They said, yeah. I said, okay, well, I'm going to apply to this. They're like, okay, cool. So it was that. I don't think I thought that much of it, which is interesting because I don't know, maybe I should have, but yeah.
No, clearly not. I think the best way to do it is just to apply.
I had pride in my story. Like, I didn't think it was bad. I thought it was good. I wasn't hemming and hawing about whether or not to apply. It was just, I kind of wanted to see, it's like, what do I have to lose besides seeing if my story would be able to make it as a finalist? And it did. And so, yay.
I'm going to put that on a sticky note, Kyra. What have I got to lose? I think that's just such a nice way to think about stuff. I was going through some of your stories now. You've been a year on the beat, and some of your last few stories, how a school custodian prepares for the first day of school, an aviation charter high school, and also how more Black families are homeschooling their children because of the pandemic and racism. How do you find your stories?
Some of it is talking with people who are born and bred Birmingham, who have that contextual knowledge about the city and are able to give me tips on things that they're like, hey, this is happening. Some of it is seeing national trends, looking at those, data and stuff like that. And sometimes it just comes from my own research and stuff I see on Twitter or things I see after going down a Google rabbit hole or things I observe. I went to a PTA meeting and I talked to a parent there and that gave me a story idea.
What's the worst part of the job? Yes, I'm going to make you say it on the radio.
I don't want to say worse because that's such a harsh word to say, but I do think for me the most challenging part is, and I said it before, is digging into policy and the politics of education. I think it's just because it's harder to understand. When it comes to talking to people and connecting with people and empathizing with them, that, I love that part. It comes more naturally to me. So talking to parents and talking to students, but once I have to get into okay, this is the actual, this is what the politicians are doing. This is why this is happening. That's the part where I get a little bit more confused and frustrated. And I do think also, like you said before, education reporting has that reputation of being a entry, beat, and it's not always taken that seriously. So I think in the scale of being a journalist and talking to people, I don't know if people always take education journalism as seriously as they should, especially now. I feel like it's gotten better now because of the pandemic and people are oh yeah, I really need to, pay attention to what's going on in schools. But yeah, I think that those are the frustrations I have, is the politics of it, which is just frustrating to understand, and also the frustration of not necessarily being taken seriously as a beat.
What would have made it easier, or what would make it easier?
I think that's a hard question for me to answer, mainly because of how new I am, right? I don't know what I don't know. And I feel when you have more experience, it's easier to look back in hindsight and be yeah, it would have been nice if I had that. But at this point, I feel I'm still I don't exactly know what necessarily would have made it easier. I've been to trainings about the things that have been challenging for me, but I think that it doesn't get better until I actually have more practice doing those things. So more practice diving into policy, more practice talking to politicians, those kinds of things.
Right. Sometimes just, you just need the time.
Yeah.
But I'm going to check back with you in another year. Do you feel supported, Kyra, not just by your newsroom, I'm just talking in general, by the journalism profession, being a young Black journalist?
I definitely am pleasantly surprised. I think in college, so I was often one of the only Black females in my classes, especially in radio. I think by my senior year, we had 3 of us, which I was so excited about. But from sophomore to junior year, it was just me in the radio course at UNC. I think I was a little scared moving into, because I love radio journalism. That's my passion. That's where I want to stay. But I was a little scared moving into the professional realm of that, because I was is there going to be other Black people or other people of color or other women for that matter who I can relate to in the Newsroom. And I found very pleasantly at WBHM, there is a lot of Black women here in radio. I know that's not the same in every member station across America, but WBHM, I really have that support from Black women here. And also, I feel like I've surrounded myself, and when I say surrounded myself, I mean basically like on social media, like on Twitter, I follow a lot of other journalists of color, other education journalists of color. And so I kind of like have made it so that I do feel supported, even if I go to a different station or if I go somewhere else. But I've created that support system for myself and other journalists of color to feel like I do have that support. So I'd say I've made support for myself.
That's great to hear. What would your advice be to the next batch of cub reporters coming up?
Well, when it comes to awards, like we said, it doesn't hurt to apply, especially if your station has a budget for awards. Might as well use that money that they've set aside. I would say center the people who the story directly affects. And like I said, that was the easy part for me, like talking to the students and the teachers and the parents. But I know for some people, they do get bogged down on the politics of it. And they talk to like, politicians or community officials, but maybe not always are prioritizing, talking to parents. And it's hard to talk to parents. At least in Alabama, it's really hard to get parents to talk on the record. But putting that effort in really adds the necessary color and context and personal interest to the stories. So just making sure that you're centering students and parents and teachers in all of your reporting.
I think that's great advice, whether you've been on the job for a year or 20 years. I want to give you the last thought, Kyra. What is the one thing you'll take away from your experience as an education reporter that you hope you'll keep through your life? So even if you stopped covering education, even if you stop being a reporter tomorrow, even if you never held a mic again.
That how kids think and what kids say has a lot of value. I think that even if I wasn't covering education, depending on what story I would be doing, I would want to make sure that I get the voice of a kid, a child, a student, something like that. I say kid, but, 17-year-olds aren't kids. But I think that understanding that what children say has value and has value in the news, especially.
We've been talking with Kyra Miles. You can follow her on Twitter at hey_Kyra May. That's MAE. Thank you for making the time to chat, Kyra.
Thank you, Kavitha. It was so good talking to you.
That wraps up this episode of EWA Radio. I'm Kavitha Cardoza. Do you have any fond memories of being a cub reporter? Let's continue the conversation on Twitter at EdWriters. Please remember to enter the EWA Awards. The link is on our website at ewa.org. You're applying again, right, Kyra?
Oh, yes. Of course. What do I have to lose?
Special thanks to Angelina Liu and Kristan Obang from EWA and Raul Garcia for production assistance. The mission of the Education Writers Association is to strengthen the community of education journalists and improve the quality of education coverage. For more than 75 years, EWA has helped reporters get the story right. Thanks for listening and lifting up education journalism.
Join the most innovative and passionate education community at South by Southwest EDU 2023. Take part in impactful community-driven programming, unparalleled networking opportunities, and unexpected discoveries. March 6th through 9th, 2023 in Austin, Texas. Visit southbysouthwestedu.com to discover more than 200 sessions already revealed, featuring inspiring thought leaders in education. Register today.